I'm going to write a completely new story following the successful formula analyzed above, targeting Canadian audiences with a 60-plus male narrator. My daughter was dying, and the doctors couldn't tell me why. She was only 38 years old, a high school teacher in Mississauga, and 3 months ago she could run 10K without breaking a sweat. Now she couldn't walk from her bedroom to the bathroom without collapsing. The specialists at Toronto General ran every test imaginable: lupus, multiple sclerosis, Lyme disease, brain tumors. Nothing explained why Emma's muscles were failing, why her speech was slurring, why her vision kept blurring. Each week brought new symptoms, and each week I watched my youngest child fade a little more. Her husband Marcus was a saint through it all. He'd given up his position as an accountant at a Bay Street firm to care for Emma full-time. Every morning he'd help her bathe, brush her hair the way she liked it, make her the smoothies she could still swallow when solid food became too difficult. Every evening he'd read to her from the mystery novels she loved, doing all the different character voices to make her smile. "You're so lucky to have him," the nurses would say, and I'd nod, feeling grateful that Emma had found such a devoted partner. But then my grandson did something that changed everything. It happened on a Tuesday evening in late September. Marcus had invited me for dinner at their home in Etobicoke. Emma was having one of her better days, alert enough to sit at the table in her wheelchair, though she couldn't manage the fork herself. I watched Marcus cut her chicken into tiny pieces, hold the glass of water to her lips, wipe her chin with such tenderness. My grandson Ryan was there too. He's 14, and he'd been so quiet these past months, watching his mother deteriorate. A smart kid, always been into computers and coding, but lately I'd noticed him watching Marcus with an expression I couldn't quite read. Halfway through dinner, Ryan stood up abruptly. "I need to show Grandpa something for my school project," he said, his voice tight. "It's in my room. Can you come look?" It seemed odd, but I followed him upstairs. He closed the door behind us, then pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "Grandpa, I need you to do something, and you can't tell Marcus," he whispered. "Promise me." The fear in his eyes made my chest tighten. "What's going on?" He handed me a slip of paper. On it, he'd written an address in Scarborough and a code, Unit 89. Password is Mom's birthday backwards. "What is this?" "It's a storage unit Marcus rented 6 months ago. I found the receipt in his car when I was looking for my soccer cleats." Ryan's voice cracked. "Grandpa, I think Marcus is making Mom sick. I think he's been poisoning her." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Ryan, that's a serious accusation. Your father loves your mother." "He's not my father," Ryan said flatly, "and I need you to check that unit. Tonight, if you can. I wanted to go myself, but I'm too young to rent a car, and I can't let him know I know. Please, Grandpa. Something is really wrong." I looked at my grandson's face, so desperate and determined, and I thought about Emma's mysterious illness, about how it had started so suddenly, right around the time Marcus had taken over preparing all her meals, about how the doctors couldn't find any explanation. "I'll go tonight," I said. "But Ryan, if you're wrong..." "I'm not wrong. Just go look, please." I drove to Scarborough with my heart hammering. The storage facility was off Lawrence Avenue, a gray concrete building with rows of orange doors. I found Unit 89 on the second floor and punched in the code Ryan had given me, 210320003. Emma's birthday reversed. The lock clicked open. Inside, my hands found the light switch. What I saw made my knees buckle. The walls were covered with photographs, pictures of Emma at the grocery store, at her school, at her doctor's appointments. Pictures of me at my morning walks in High Park, at the Tim Hortons I visited every Wednesday, at my weekly card games at the community center. There were photos of Ryan at soccer practice, at his friends' houses, even through his bedroom window. Someone had been following us, watching us, documenting our every move for months. On a folding table sat a plastic file box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were manila folders, each labeled with chilling precision. The first folder was titled E-Medical Records. Inside were photocopies of Emma's patient files from 3 different hospitals. But these weren't her real records. Someone had doctored them, changing dates, altering test results, adding symptoms that Emma had never reported. Mixed in were printouts about rare poisons, untraceable substances that mimicked neurological diseases. One article was highlighted. Thallium poisoning presents as progressive weakness, vision problems, and speech difficulties. often misdiagnosed as autoimmune disease. My stomach turned. The second folder was labeled Insurance. Inside, I found a life insurance policy on Emma I'd never seen before. $2 million, taken out 18 months ago, with Marcus as the sole beneficiary. The premium payments came from a joint account Emma didn't know existed. There were also printouts showing Marcus's gambling debts, totaling over $300,000 to various casinos in Niagara Falls and online betting sites. The third folder made my blood run cold. It was titled New Life, Post E. Inside were printed emails to a woman named Jasmine in Vancouver. The messages were explicit about their affair, but it was the timeline that horrified me. They'd been planning this for over 2 years. Once she's gone, one email read, we'll have everything we need to start fresh. The insurance money will clear my debts and give us the life we deserve. No one will suspect anything. The doctors already think it's autoimmune. There were vacation brochures for Costa Rica, property listings in British Columbia, a detailed timeline outlining Emma's expected decline, and most damning, a handwritten journal in Marcus's distinctive scrawl, meticulously recording every dose of poison he'd administered, every symptom that resulted, every doctor's appointment, where he'd carefully steered the diagnosis away from toxicology tests. Week 1. Added. 5 milligrams to morning coffee. Slight tremor observed by evening. Week 4. Increased to 2 milligrams daily. E complained of weakness. Suggested she see neurologist. Week 8. E. Unable to walk unaided. Perfect progression. Doctor suspects MS. Week 12. Final phase beginning. Increased dose to 5 milligrams. Should see complete system failure within 3 to 4 weeks. I photographed everything with shaking hands. Every page of that journal, every email, every surveillance photo, every forged document. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it, locked the unit, and drove straight home. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. I needed to think. If I went to the authorities right now with what I had, would it be enough? Marcus could claim the storage unit wasn't his, that anyone could have rented it with false information. He could say the photos were a stalker's work, that he knew nothing about them. The journal wasn't signed. The emails could have been faked. I needed more. I needed proof that would hold up in court, that would save Emma's life and put Marcus away forever. More importantly, I needed to stop the poisoning immediately without tipping Marcus off that we knew. If he suspected we were onto him, he might accelerate his plan. Or worse, disappear before we could act. I called Ryan from a payphone outside a 7-Eleven in Mississauga. Yes, a payphone. I'm 64 years old and I don't trust cell phones when someone's life is at stake. Did you find it? His voice was desperate. I found it. Ryan, you were right. All of it. How did you know? I noticed Mom got sicker after Marcus made her tea. Always this special herbal tea, he said, would help her energy. And he never let anyone else prepare it. Always insisted on doing it himself. I started paying attention. Every time she drank that tea, she'd get worse within a few hours. I pretended to be in the kitchen getting a snack one night, and I saw him take this little brown bottle from his jacket pocket and add something to her cup. When he left the room, I took a photo of the bottle. He paused. The label said thallium sulfate. I Googled it. It's rat poison, Grandpa. My God. This 14-year-old boy had figured out what a team of doctors couldn't. Here's what we're going to do, I said, forcing my voice steady. Tomorrow morning, you're going to tell Marcus you're staying at my place for a few days. Tell him you need space because seeing your mom like this is too hard. He'll understand that. Can you do that? Yes. Good. I'll pick you up at 8. And Ryan, you saved your mother's life today. That night, I called my oldest daughter, Sarah, who's a Crown prosecutor in Ottawa. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. And when I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Dad, I need to make some calls. Don't do anything until tomorrow. I'm coming to Toronto tonight. Sarah arrived at my apartment in North York at 3 in the morning with a colleague from the Special Prosecutions Unit. We spread the photos I'd taken across my dining room table, and they studied everything with the careful attention of people who prosecute murders for a living. This is good, Sarah's colleague said. But we need to catch him in the act. We need to prove he's still actively poisoning her. Otherwise, his defense will claim this was all staged, that he discovered some stalker's storage unit and we're framing him. How do we do that? I asked. We need to get a sample of whatever he's giving Emma, and we need to do it without him knowing. Can Ryan help with that? The next morning, I picked up Ryan, and we drove to Oakville to meet with Sarah and two detectives from the Toronto Police Service. They'd moved fast, getting a warrant to place surveillance cameras in Emma's home, but they needed our help. Ryan, do you think you could get a sample of that tea he makes for your mom? Detective Morrison asked. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, but a steel backbone. I can try. He makes it in the kitchen before he brings it to her. We need you to distract him. Get him to leave the kitchen for at least 30 seconds while the tea is prepared. Can you do that? Ryan nodded. I can pretend to have a panic attack. Tell him I need to talk about Mom. He'll come to my room. That's good. That's brave. Detective Morrison handed him a small kit. When he leaves the kitchen, take this eyedropper and get a few drops from her cup. Put it in this vial and hide it in your room. We'll have officers outside ready to move in and secure the evidence. I wanted to tell them to find another way, that Ryan was just a child, that this was too dangerous. But I looked at my grandson's face and saw the determination there. He'd already been living with this horror for weeks, suspecting what Marcus was doing, carrying that terrible weight alone. I'll do it, Ryan said. That afternoon, everything went according to plan. Ryan went home, claiming he felt better after talking to me and wanted to be with his mom. Marcus seemed pleased, probably thinking the boy would be a good witness to Emma's natural decline. At 4:30, right on schedule, Marcus began preparing Emma's evening tea. Ryan waited until he saw the brown bottle come out, saw Marcus add the drops to the cup, and then Ryan started screaming from upstairs. Marcus, Marcus, help, something's wrong. Through the hidden cameras the police had installed that morning, we watched Marcus hesitate, then set down the cup and run upstairs. The moment he was out of sight, Ryan slipped downstairs, used the eyedropper to extract a sample, sealed it in the vial, and hid it in his pocket. Then he ran back upstairs, and by the time Marcus found him, Ryan was sitting on his bed, breathing hard, explaining that he'd had a panic attack, thinking about losing his mom. Marcus hugged him, comforted him, told him everything would be all right. Then he went back downstairs and served Emma her poisoned tea. She was raising the cup to her lips when the police burst through the door. The toxicology report came back the next day. The tea contained enough thallium to kill Emma within a week, maybe less given her already weakened state. The doctors at Toronto General immediately began chelation therapy to remove the heavy metals from her system. Marcus was arrested and charged with attempted murder, fraud, and a dozen other offenses. The evidence was overwhelming. The storage unit, the journal, the emails, the insurance fraud, and most damning of all, the sample of poisoned tea taken from Emma's cup with his fingerprints on it. During the investigation, they discovered Marcus had done this before. His first wife in Calgary had died 7 years ago from what was ruled sudden organ failure. Now, they were exhuming her body. There was also a girlfriend in Montreal who'd gotten mysteriously ill before breaking up with him. She'd survived, but barely. The pattern was there. We'd just been too blind to see it. Emma's recovery was slow but steady. 3 weeks after Marcus's arrest, her muscle strength began returning. 6 weeks later, she could walk again. The doctor said if we'd waited another few days, the damage would have been irreversible. Another week, and she would have died. Ryan stayed with me during those first difficult weeks, not because he had to, but because Emma wanted him safe while she healed, and because I think we both needed each other. We'd talk late into the night, this boy who'd saved his mother's life, and I'd listen as he worked through the trauma of what he'd discovered. I kept thinking I was crazy, he told me one evening. I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I accuse him and destroy our family for nothing? But then I'd remember Mom's face, how tired she looked, how she couldn't even hold a book anymore, and I knew I had to trust what I was seeing, even if no one else believed me. The trial was 6 months later. Sarah prosecuted the case herself. She put that journal on screen for the jury, read every cold, calculated entry in Marcus's handwriting. She showed them the emails to Jasmine. She brought in toxicologists who explained exactly how thallium destroys the body, how its symptoms mimic diseases, how difficult it is to detect. She called Ryan to the stand, and my grandson testified with a steady voice about the moment he'd realized his stepfather was murdering his mother. The jury took 4 hours to convict on all counts. Marcus received life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. He'll be 81 years old before he's even eligible for a hearing. Emma stood in the courtroom gallery when the verdict was read, her hand gripping mine so tight I lost circulation. She'd gained back 40 pounds and most of her strength, though the doctors said some nerve damage would be permanent. She was alive, and she was there, and that was everything. The media called Ryan a hero. CTV News did a feature. The Toronto Star ran a front-page story. But my grandson didn't want fame. He just wanted his mom back. Emma sold the Etobicoke house. Too many bad memories. She and Ryan moved to a condo in Liberty Village, closer to my apartment in North York. She returned to teaching this past September, though she switched to a different school. Fresh start, she said. I see them twice a week now. We have dinner together every Sunday, and I help Ryan with his math homework on Wednesdays. He's applying to computer science programs for university. Wants to work in cybersecurity. He says he wants to help catch bad guys, people who hide their crimes online, people who hurt others and think they're too clever to get caught. When I look at Ryan now, I see a different person than the quiet boy he was before all this. He's stronger, more confident, but there's also a wariness in his eyes that wasn't there before. He learned too young that evil doesn't always look like evil, that sometimes it looks like someone who makes you breakfast and reads you bedtime stories. Emma is still processing everything. She's in therapy, working through the betrayal, the violation of having someone she loved try to murder her slowly while pretending to care for her. She told me last week that the worst part wasn't the poisoning itself, but the gaslighting that came with it. He'd tell me I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid, that my illness was making me irrational, she said. And I believed him. I trusted him more than I trusted myself. That's what I have to forgive myself for, Dad. Not for being fooled, but for ignoring my own instincts when they were screaming that something was wrong. I think about that a lot. About how we're taught to trust, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to believe the best in others. Those are good values, important values, but there's a difference between trust and blind faith. There's a difference between kindness and ignoring warning signs. Ryan saw those warning signs because he was watching without the bias of love. He noticed patterns because he was willing to question what everyone else accepted. And when he realized what was happening, he didn't stay silent, even though speaking up meant potentially being wrong, potentially causing conflict, potentially not being believed. That's the lesson I've learned from all this. And it's one I try to share whenever I tell this story. Listen when someone tells you something feels wrong, especially children, especially when they're frightened to speak up. Ryan came to me because he knew I would listen, because he trusted that even if his suspicions sounded crazy, I would at least investigate before dismissing him. How many victims might still be alive if someone had listened when they said something felt off? How many abusers get away with their crimes because we're more comfortable assuming the best than facing the uncomfortable possibility that we're wrong about someone? There's another lesson here too, one about greed and what it does to people. Marcus wasn't a monster when Emma met him. He was a regular guy, maybe a bit too interested in money, maybe with some debts he kept hidden, but not a killer. The poison came later, when the gambling debts piled up, when he met Jasmine and wanted a different life, when he realized Emma's insurance policy could solve all his problems if she just happened to die. That's how ordinary people become murderers, not in a moment of passion, but through a series of small compromises. First you lie about your debts, then you forge a signature on an insurance policy. Then you consider how much easier life would be if your wife died naturally. Then you research untraceable poisons. Then you tell yourself just one dose won't hurt. Then you tell yourself she's already sick anyway. Then you calculate exactly how much will kill her without raising suspicion. Evil isn't born, it's built, one rationalization at a time. I think Marcus genuinely believed he was entitled to that insurance money, that Emma's life was worth less than his financial freedom and his affair with Jasmine. That's what greed does. It makes you see people as obstacles rather than human beings. It makes you believe your wants matter more than someone else's life. The prosecutors found Marcus's financial records going back years. He'd been living beyond his means since his 20s, always chasing the big win at the casino that would pay off his debts, always convinced he was one hand of blackjack away from freedom. When he married Emma, he saw her teacher's pension, her modest savings, her life insurance through the school board. He saw opportunity. After his first wife died and he collected that insurance payout, he gambled it all away within 18 months. That's when he moved to Ontario, changed cities, started fresh with Emma. The pattern was there, but we didn't see it because we trusted him. Because he seemed so devoted, so caring, so loving. That's something else I've learned. Abusers are often exceptional at playing the role of devoted partner. They have to be. Their entire scheme depends on no one suspecting them. Marcus spent 2 years building credibility, establishing himself as Emma's primary caregiver, making sure everyone saw him as the perfect husband. That way, when she started getting sick, when he isolated her from friends and family by taking over all her care, no one questioned it. We all thought, thank God she has Marcus. The warning signs were there if we'd known to look for them. The way he discouraged Emma from seeing her friends. The way he always insisted on being present at her doctor's appointments, answering questions before she could. The way he controlled her medications, her meals, her schedule. Abusers need control. They need to manage the narrative. Marcus couldn't risk Emma getting proper care or someone else discovering the poisoning, so he made sure he was always the gatekeeper. Emma sees that now, in hindsight. She's working with her therapist to recognize those patterns so she'll never miss them again. But here's what I want people to understand. It's not her fault. She didn't see it. Victims of abuse aren't weak or stupid. They're normal people who trusted someone they loved, someone who deliberately manipulated that trust. If you find yourself in a relationship where your partner insists on controlling your medical care, your finances, your social connections, that's not love. That's control. Real love respects autonomy. Real care encourages independence. Real devotion wants you to be healthy and strong, not weak and dependent. Ryan is working through his own trauma with a counselor who specializes in adolescent therapy. He has nightmares sometimes, dreams where he tries to warn Emma but no one will listen, or where he's too late and she dies before he can act. His therapist says that's normal, that he's processing the enormous responsibility he carried for those weeks when he suspected but wasn't sure, when he was watching his mother deteriorate while suspecting his stepfather was the cause. I should have said something sooner, he told me last month. You said something exactly when you were ready to say it, I replied. And your mother is alive because of your courage. That's what matters. But I understand his guilt. I carry my own. I'm her father. I should have seen it. I should have asked more questions. I should have insisted on being more involved in her care, instead of trusting Marcus to handle everything. The therapist tells me that's not rational, that I couldn't have known, that Marcus was a skilled manipulator who fooled medical professionals, let alone family members. Still, I wonder, what if I'd visited more often? What if I'd insisted on preparing a meal myself, instead of letting Marcus always be in charge of the kitchen? What if I'd asked Emma how she felt about Marcus being so controlling, instead of praising him for being so devoted? The truth is, we all missed it. Emma's friends, her colleagues at school, the doctors at 3 different hospitals, Sarah, who's a prosecutor trained to spot liars, me, all of us. Because Marcus was good at this. He'd done it before and learned from his mistakes. By the time he got to Emma, he'd perfected his method. That's why Ryan's willingness to question, to trust his instincts, even when everyone else seemed convinced Marcus was wonderful, saved Emma's life. Children often see things adults miss because they're not blinded by social niceties or the pressure to be polite. Ryan didn't care that questioning Marcus might be rude. He cared that his mother was dying. We need to teach children that it's okay to speak up when something feels wrong, even if they can't articulate exactly what's bothering them. Ryan couldn't prove Marcus was poisoning Emma. He just knew something was off, and he was brave enough to voice that concern to someone he trusted would listen. I'm grateful every day that he trusted me, that he knew he could come to me with something that sounded crazy, and I would take him seriously. Building that kind of relationship with your grandchildren, your children, your students, your neighbors, that's how we catch the predators and abusers. They rely on silence. They rely on victims being too afraid or too conditioned to speak up. They rely on communities not believing accusations that seem too dramatic or too serious. But when we listen, when we investigate, when we trust the people who are brave enough to say something is wrong here, we save lives. The detectives told us that Emma wasn't the only victim they found in Marcus's past. Besides his first wife who died, besides the girlfriend in Montreal who survived, they found 2 other women he'd dated seriously. Both had become mysteriously ill. Both had broken off the relationships and recovered. When detectives contacted them, and explained the investigation, both women broke down. They'd suspected something at the time but convinced themselves they were being paranoid, that their boyfriend would never hurt them, that they were imagining things. That's what abusers count on. Our reluctance to believe the worst, our desire to trust, our fear of being wrong. So here's what I want people to take away from Emma's story, from Ryan's courage, from the nightmare we lived through. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't talk yourself out of your instincts because you don't want to believe someone could be that evil, or because you're afraid of being rude or causing conflict. Your safety matters more than someone else's feelings. Listen, when someone, especially a child, tells you they're concerned about something, don't dismiss them because they're young or because their concern seems unlikely. Ryan was 14 years old, and he solved a mystery that baffled medical professionals. Age doesn't determine observational skills or valid concerns. Watch for control disguised as care. Real support empowers people. Abuse isolates and weakens them. If someone in your life is insisting on managing every aspect of your care, your finances, your relationships, ask yourself why. Is it really because they love you, or is it because they need to control the narrative? Document everything. Ryan took a photo of that bottle. I photographed everything in the storage unit. That evidence was crucial. If something feels wrong, gather proof. You might need it. Don't stay silent out of fear of being wrong. Yes, there's a chance you'll investigate and find nothing, but there's also a chance you'll save a life. Which risk would you rather take? Emma is planning to write a book about her experience. She wants other victims of abuse to know they're not alone, that they're not crazy for suspecting someone they love could hurt them. She wants to help people recognize the signs of coercive control and intimate partner violence that we all missed until it was almost too late. Ryan is thinking about starting a YouTube channel about recognizing scams and manipulation tactics, using what he learned from this experience to help other teens spot predatory behavior. He's got such wisdom for someone so young. Wisdom earned through trauma, but wisdom nonetheless. As for me, I'm just grateful. Grateful that Ryan trusted his instincts. Grateful that he trusted me. Grateful that Sarah knew the right people to call. Grateful that the police acted so quickly. Grateful for every moment I get to spend with Emma now, knowing how close I came to losing her forever. Last Sunday, we were having dinner at Emma's new condo, just the three of us. Ryan was telling some story about his computer science club. Emma was laughing, and I looked around that table and felt such overwhelming gratitude. You know what I think about sometimes? Emma said, turning serious. I think about all the people who don't have a Ryan, all the victims whose families believed the abuser instead of trusting their instincts, all the people who died because no one was willing to look for evidence when something felt wrong. We can't save everyone, Ryan said quietly. But maybe if we tell your story, Mom, if we talk about what happened and what to watch for, maybe we can help some people recognize the signs before it's too late. That's why I'm sharing this. Not for attention or sympathy, but because Marcus is not unique. There are other abusers out there right now. Other people slowly poisoning their partners. Other victims being told they're imagining things when they voice concern. If you're reading this and something about it resonates with you, if there's someone in your life who's making you feel weak and dependent and confused, please reach out. Tell someone. Document what's happening. Trust your instincts. And if someone comes to you with concerns that sound dramatic or unlikely, please listen. Really listen. Investigate before dismissing them. You might be the person who saves a life. Ryan saved his mother because he was willing to question what everyone else accepted, because he was willing to look foolish if it meant protecting someone he loved, because he understood that silence isn't kindness when someone's life is at stake. That's the legacy I hope comes from this nightmare. Not just that Emma survived, though God knows I'm grateful for that every single day, but that people learn to listen, to question, to trust their instincts even when it's uncomfortable or socially awkward. Evil relies on good people staying silent. It relies on us being too polite to question, too trusting to investigate, too afraid of conflict to speak up. Every time we choose courage over comfort, every time we choose to listen instead of dismiss, every time we choose to investigate instead of assume the best, we make it harder for people like Marcus to succeed. Emma is alive today because a 14-year-old boy chose courage, because he was willing to risk being wrong if it meant potentially saving his mother, because he trusted himself when no one else saw the danger. That's not just heroism, That's a lesson for all of us about the power of paying attention, of trusting our instincts, of speaking up even when it's hard. I hope we all learn from Ryan's example. I hope we all have the courage to act when we see something wrong, even if we're not completely sure, even if it might cause trouble, even if everyone else thinks we're overreacting. Because sometimes the person who seems like they're overreacting is actually the only person who's seeing clearly, and sometimes listening to that person, taking them seriously, investigating their concerns, is the difference between life and death.